What's up? Okay, so the Netflix live-action adaptation dropped. I binged it in one go, then went back and rewatched book 1 of the original series and then rewatched the live-action again. And here are my thoughts. So if you just happened to stumble on this video with the wise YouTube algorithm, I need to tell you where I'm coming from with these impressions, because I've been working on an Avatar fan game with a small team over the past 4 years. And you might have heard of it, it's called 4 Seasons. We analyzed every single frame of the original show, so by nature, this review will be overly critical and analytical, and I'm not here to only bash on it, nor only to praise it. The show has its flaws, and if you don't see it, I urge you to rewatch the original again and note down what made it great. This video will focus on everything that stood out to me as either positive or negative, as small as it might be. Even though the live-action series has its strengths seen in a vacuum, I will heavily compare it to the original show in this video, sometimes just to point out differences and sometimes to analyze why certain things work better in either rendition of the story. This video will also have heavy spoilers for the show, so if you haven't watched it yet, do that and then come back. Okay, let's start off with episode 1. Let me start with the fact that I like that they show Aang's life in the air temple before he gets discovered. Sozin sets the tone of the show very early on by literally roasting one of his men on screen. Right away, this isn't a show primarily meant for kids, although the original covers many important topics that this one doesn't, funnily enough. But the audience grew and so did the show. I actually really like that change. It gives everything more weight and urgency, and it does fit the themes very well, I think. Early on, Aang floats down a tower at the Southern Air Temple, showing off his airbender skills. It's weird that he is that powerful already though. While it's not a Zahir level of flying or anything, no airbender in canon does something remotely similar to this without any help, so it's a bit weird. Aang does stop his falls or falls slower, but never boosts through the air like that. One could argue that up high in the mountains, the air carries him a bit more or something like that, but you are lying to yourself if you think that this is normal airbending. In the end, I don't mind it too much as long as they only keep it for this beginning scene, since I think this shows how graceful airbending is, and especially for people who never saw Avatar, this might be a good way to introduce Aang and his power at an early age. Gyatso is amazing and makes you feel cozy, absolutely love his acting, and it's a great introduction. I'm not a big fan of the layout of the Southern Air Temple. While I understand they made it look this way to have some proper fights being shown and to have enough space for all the airbenders, the flat nature of it takes a little bit away from the magic of the original design with the tower and everything. That also means there's no place to house all of the statues with past avatars, which I always thought was such a cool location to have. The design of the actual temples is very well done and I think also believable, so it's a trade-off. I do like the idea that all the airbenders came together at the Southern Air Temple, also that raises the question if the Fire Nation knew that they're all gonna be there. Did they get insight that this would be happening? And most importantly, did they send troops to the other temples too and they found no one around? So I would have loved an explanation there, but I guess it's fine. Since Sokka never teases Katara in the live action as he does in the original, they had to come up with another way to reveal the iceberg. They are doing it with Katara and with her measly waterbending attempts to get the boat closer. Not a big fan of that, because why would it trigger the iceberg? Back in the village we meet Grungran, who straight up tells Aang everything he needs to know. He's alone and air nomads are likely all dead. While it makes sense that Grungran would tell Aang something like that, it does take away from the moment when Aang discovered this for himself at the Southern Air Temple. It is a nice way to get that original intro somewhere in there, so I'm fine with it in some ways. But again, the impact at the Southern Air Temple would have been greater if she wouldn't have told him. Aang also already has a Bison whistle, which she bought in the Pirate Bay in the original. There's no Pirate Bay episode though, so I think it's fine that they just give it to him, although it's not really used that much. However, I'm seriously disappointed that they cut the penguin sledding part. It's one of those fun segments that define the world of Avatar. It also helps to contrast the grim entrance from Zuko in the original. The live action in general takes away a lot of the fun aspects of their journey for a more serious tone. The fight against Zuko in the live-action rendition was way better than the original. The bending CGI does elevate the scene a lot, and we also got some humor moments from Sokka that for the most part are fitting, but it does feel a bit forced in some parts for sure. Some improv would have been great for the show in general, I think. Sokka isn't much of a comedic relief anymore, and the show focuses more on the leader aspect of him. The music absolutely slaps. I love it. There is definitely some overuse of CGI, like fully CG characters with odd physics, and not just in the intro but across the show. Especially weird that they use these for close-ups in some shots, like the Avatar state scenes. They don't hold up enough for that kind of shot, and it was really distracting for me, I have to say. And in the end of episode 1, the gang flies away on Appa while Zuko shoots another fireball towards them, and for some reason Katara can suddenly bend water hundreds of feet up while previously only being able to move water forwards and backwards. Felt very out of place, and I was actually wondering what happened at that moment, because surely that wasn't Katara in that moment, based on the knowledge we already had. And at the Southern Air Temple, Aang also discovers Gyatso's corpse, and he enters the Avatar state. He does calm down by thinking about him, and I think that was a nice touch, better than Katara calming him down, especially considering how little they know each other at that moment. So I think that was a nice change. Episode 2. On the way to Kyoshi Island, Katara finds a waterbending scroll that Grungan gifts to her, which makes sense since there is no Pirates episode, where she originally would have gotten it. They left out the Unagi and Elephant Koi scene, which is understandable, but this moment would have shown that the world is bigger than you might think and that there are dangers all around. It takes a little bit away from the world building in my opinion. Kyoshi village itself looks very good, very grounded. The layout is somewhat intact with the houses stacked up to the main house, but I wish they would have made the main house a little bit bigger. The Kyoshi warrior costumes and makeup look really good. They absolutely nailed that. Likewise, the sound design of her fans, especially when Suki is training with Sokka. Speaking of, they don't waste any time to come closer together. It does feel somewhat organic in the time frame of the show though, and they had to develop their relationship quickly if Suki is only in this episode. Some people thought Suki would join the gang after Kyoshi Island, and I would have actually preferred that change. It would have given them more time to learn about each other and develop a more meaningful relationship. Having the Kyoshi shrine under the Kyoshi statue is a nice touch, and I actually prefer this to the original, in which it was just a random house. Aang then talks to Kyoshi in the Spirit World, which was a trip for sure. The Spirit World is one of the things I really dislike about the show. The original always made it super mysterious, dark and scary, and here it's just a foggy forest. Kyoshi is as intimidating as she should be, and the performance was brilliant. Likewise, her bending sequences were amazing and showed how strong she was. I saw some people complaining about Kyoshi flying, but they probably forgot that in the Avatar state, flying is very much a thing, as seen on many occasions in canon. Why would Kyoshi know and also show Aang the future though? Like how and why? There are similar sequences in the original with Roku and the comet, but he never explicitly said it's the future. And as you might have guessed, they also replaced Roku with Kyoshi in this sense a little bit, but it is what it is. Episode 2 is also one of the few times anyone gets dirty clothes in this show. Another major gripe I have. This is live action. Gives them some grime, some dirt. The clean costumes are in stark contrast to the rough and detailed environments. Everything feels very staged in this way. Not to mention it would have aided the goal of the show, as in making it more serious and grounded. Episode 3. Oh boy. This is where it starts to slowly get messy. I wouldn't be surprised if this was around the time the original creators left the project. As mentioned in a recent interview with Albert Kim, the showrunner, they obviously had to cut and combine certain things. This and the next episode, however, feel a bit too much, and I think they wrote themselves into unfavorable story changes, trying to combine as many storylines as they did. It is obvious that they tried their best, and some things work out, while others absolutely do not, but we will get to that. The episode starts strong by giving us the first look at Azula. I was a bit worried about Azula's performance before the release, but she absolutely killed it in my opinion. I got proper Azula vibes, and checking in with the general consensus about the show, I feel a bit alone on this one? Question mark? Maybe it was because I watched it in German and the German dub is actually really good for Azula. So I don't know if that was a reason why. We also got a better and one of the few looks at Momo. Very cute indeed. Thankfully, they mitigated the punished Momo look a little bit from the first reveal. Also, I don't know where else I would mention this, but I do really like the look of the interior scenes in the Fire Nation ships. They did translate the visual design of those really well, I think. Likewise, Omashu looks sick. They captured the feeling of it, but I have to say that I don't like that they kept the backside as the mountain. An entire city carved out of it would have been even better, I think. Also, when they enter Omashu, first I thought that Katara meets Haru in the beginning here. That would have made some sense to me, since they would have obviously skipped that episode, but it's not even Haru, it's Jet. A wild change, which in the grand scheme of things makes sense for the show, but crazy that they decided to do that. Whatever though, Theo and the Machinist are also here, effectively already skipping the entire Northern Air Temple, which makes me personally a little bit sad, because I spent so much time working on it. But they also skipped the Bonzu disguise and just let Aang with his arrow right into the city. Having the Machinist in Omashu does make a bit of sense, as they explain it with him keeping an eye on the mail-cut system, for example. So, since they also meet Jet, they also meet Jet's crew, and I absolutely adore the costume designs for Jet's crew. They nailed it to get those very cartoony characters into live action. The treetop hideout in quotation marks, on the other hand, is pretty laughable. The original hideout was so special and beautiful. This is literally just a climbing park for kids. Jet explains that they have many hideouts and this is one of them. Still though, at least make it somewhat impressive, especially because surely people would find this one, no? Jet continues with some great dialogue with Katara, which gives him a bit more character, and I think Jet's actor overall also did a really good job. Okay, can I just mention that it makes no sense for the mail cuts to go up like this? They never show someone bending them up, and even if they did, it would need to be continuously being bent up to work like that. In the original, they even showed how the mail cuts go up again with bending, and here just a quick way to get Katara and Sokka up the city without explaining or showing how it actually works. Episode 4, by far the lowest point of the live-action series. I don't know what they thought when they wrote this one. One of the few saving graces of this episode is that they thought about the Genomite lamps. Yay! For Zuko to infiltrate Omashu, he needs clothes, so he pulls the soldier into a bush and changes into his outfit in less than a second. Even the helmet is still moving. Hidden talent, I guess. Inside Bumi's palace, we see some statues of Flopsy, which is the only nod to the challenges from the original, and Bumi instantly reveals himself to Aang. Where do we go from here? I guess we just make Bumi extremely passive-aggressive towards his best friend. Katara and Sokka are on their own mission to go through Omashu's tunnel system, running into the secret tunnel song and into the Cave of Two Lovers from Book 2. Sokka and his sister in the Cave of Two Lovers. The moment in which Aang and Katara supposedly kiss. I'll let you figure that out for yourself. The Badger Mole gets some screen time too, and I think it looks really good. In general, all the animals in the show look really good. I'm glad they took their time with that. But then we cut to Iroh and Leaves from the Vine. Because why not? Book 3 is too far away, and we need some more fan service, in which I think the worst possible way. And I'm sure I'll get some angry comments about this, why I didn't like this scene here, but let me explain. Leaves from the Vine always makes me cry in the original. This is literally the first time ever it did not. The entire imagery of Iroh sitting on the hill with the tree in front of the grave of his son at sunset hit so hard in the original. Additionally, with the commemoration for Mako, the original voice actor for Iroh, but here, they just put him in a dark room with some people, not even some alone time, absolutely ruining this moment later in the series. It just has no place here. The Leaves from the Vine theme comes back later too when he sees his son in Zuko, but that moment could have been so much more impactful retroactively if they just cut the initial scene with Iroh here. It also makes me question, if they do book 3, will they do it again? Because they kind of can't skip it there. So I'm interested. Not a big fan of having Leaves from the Vine here though. I know a lot lot of people liked the scene in the live action, but it felt more fan service as anything else to me, especially on the first viewing. But back to Bumi. So there are no challenges because there's no reason for it in the show, since they wrote themselves into a corner with that Bumi change. I guess that saves on CGI budget. The waterfall scene probably would have looked awful here anyway if the other CG character scenes were anything to go by. Even Aang points out how out of character Bumi is here. Likewise, the fight doesn't make any sense at all in this context, and they can't have the moment of Aang figuring out who Bumi actually is by noticing that the challenges all had different solutions than you might think. Additionally, Bumi straight up tries to kill Aang. His entire story is dismissed, twisted, and out of touch. Even the flashback with him doesn't show how much of best friends Aang and Bumi were. Additionally to that, Bumi is meant to think outside the box, see beyond the surface details, and understand Aang's situation. I don't know how you could rewrite one of the most fun and beloved Avatar characters in a way that makes him so unlikable unless you truly don't understand Bumi. Genuinely disappointing. They essentially replaced Bumi with the fisherman from the Storm episode who blames Aang for his disappearance. They could have easily given that character trait to another person. Personally, I think Jet would have been a perfect candidate for this when the gang finds out Jet's real motivations. But in the end, we got some nice fighting sequences with Iroh, although I wish they would have kept him at least shirtless here, but that's just a personal preference. Okay, so let's leave that episode behind us. It gets better from here. Starting off with Momo. Of course, Momo is cute. I wish we got to see more of him. I absolutely love him. And then we cut to Sokka, who finds a girl with a puppet, and he suggests the Bonzu name for the puppet. Why would you do that if you don't include the scene in Omashu though? Very odd fanservice choice in my opinion. If you want to do fanservice right, why not straight up do the Bonzu disguise in Omashu? Would the disguise work in this context of live action? I don't know, but you could have made it work with the dumb guard, for example. Sokka and Katara being pulled into the spirit world by no apparent reason at first seemed really weird to me, but they did cover some important grounds with them being there, so I was actually fine with that. It essentially replaces the swamp from book 2, so I would not be surprised at all if they skip the swamp in season 2. Wan Shi Tong felt very fanservice-y to me too here. In my mind, he has to protect the knowledge in his library all the time. He does look extremely good though. I love the sound design of him, but he could be a bit bigger. I would have still preferred if they used another spirit here though, but then we get to the reveal of Heibai and holy, by far the most insane thing in this show. They went above and beyond with him. Sadly there's no fight and also no reveal of his panda form at the end, so it's basically just a lost spirit and the story arc never really gets resolved. We also got a scene with Sokka and the three-tailed wolf spirit which represents Yui, which he doesn't know yet, and for me it doesn't really add up why Yui would be a wolf, even with her explanation in later episodes. Does she choose to be a wolf? Is it because she is from the Northern Water tribe? But then again, the wolf type isn't the same that is actually present at the North Pole. Can she be another spirit too? What happens to her wolf spirit after she sacrifices herself? Because then she's just herself in the spirit world? Who knows? It never gets explained or shown. Found it a little bit random. For sure a way to include Yui, but I would have loved to have a little bit more explanation on that part, as I just explained. Ko gets a lot more screen time in this show, which I loved. You see how Ko prepares his meals and actually eats it too. I do have to say though that the scene with Aang and Ko didn't really do it for me. The setup in the original makes you scared of him even beforehand. Aang can't be emotional and the faceless monkey sets the scene too. This is not present here and took away a good chunk of the scariness for me. Also sad they didn't include the actual spirit world setting for Ko's lair with a big upside down tree and the huge wolf in the background. Ko's just in his cave behind some trees here. They missed the opportunity to make it even more epic, including the fog of lost souls in this. Like this as a forest is pretty lame in my opinion, since everything else in this spirit world is already a forest. So yeah, a little bit of a missed opportunity, I think. We also get another look at Azula and her blue flames for the first time. I love that the color changes because of her hate, so that's a nice touch. Masks is by far my favorite episode of this one. They nailed Crescent Island and the temple. I spent so much time making this in our game and they really took their time to get this right. Huge respect for everyone who worked on this. Likewise, Rocco's throne room is really well made. I do like the addition of his relics here. However, there is a small house besides the temple in the original, which would have been a great fit for it too. I miss the fact that Aang can only talk to him when the light shines through the crystal in the right way. There's also no cave and it's kind of weird that they would enter the room from the side with a secret entrance, since it's clearly freestanding in the center of the temple in the show. But whatever, the original series is just as, if not more, inconsistent with layout, especially in this episode, so it's fine. Rocco's performance is just as amazing as the one from Kyoshi. I loved him. It was weird to see him as a bit of a comedic relief, but I think that was needed after that Bumi massacre. I can't say the same for the CG background in the scene though. That I think was very weak composited. Felt a bit out of place. June being weird with Iroh instead of Iroh being weird with June is also a welcome change. Works miles better than the original while still having it as a nod to the original. Again, I don't know where else to put it here, but I'm a big fan of the design of the Fire Nation armor in general. I think they translated the original design very well into live action, and it does look pretty good. The Blue Spirit segment for the most part was awesome. They got the mask perfect, and the fighting and the escaping was sick. Some weird full character CG moments here though, for sure. It's also one of the few scenes that is almost a one-to-one recreation from the original, so it was fun to see how it would actually translate if you would do like a one-to-one recreation. But yeah, the Agni Kai between Ozai and Zuko had way more fighting than I anticipated, but I actually quite liked that. I wish they would have kept the normal people watching it though. In the live action it was basically just a royal family. My favorite addition / change they made was the fact that the 41st Division Zuko saved from being killed at the front ended up being his crew. This is masterful writing and my favorite moment from the live action. I'm so glad they did this and it works out so well. The entire scene is so emotional, and yeah, even on the second viewing of this scene I had a little bit of teary eyes. So yeah, this was awesome. Again, sad though that Heibei's arc wasn't resolved. It was a little bit redeemed by an amazing monologue at the end though. So overall, episode 6, by far my favorite episode. Very well done. At this point, I was still secretly hoping for the Northern Air Temple to make an appearance, but there wasn't really a reason for it anymore, so oh well. The Northern Water Tribe, for the most part, looked really good. They cut the empty parts from the front and moved the layout a bit. I do like the design with the exception of the mountain on the sides, since they carved the space out of a glacier. I don't see them doing it with rock, I guess. The big temple works out really well in live action too. I also like that they show how they prepare the front of the wall with some ice in the water. In the original there was just some ice sticking out of it from the get-go, and here they actually bend it up. This is however a bit of a nothing episode. The gang gets situated in the water tribe, Katara learns to heal and about the no fighting rule for women, Sokka and Yui get straight to the point, and Aang talks with Kuruk about his story with Ko and Kuruk's life in the spirit world. Thoroughly enjoyed that part. I think it was a nice addition and gave a little bit more insight to Kuruk's character. Aang gets really out of character for a moment with Katara here, which was a little bit distracting, and I have to say that I'm not a big fan of Yui's wig. Dare I say, I actually like the movie rendition of Yui more here. It was painfully obvious that it's a wig, and yeah, I don't think it worked out. And Katara of course fights against Pakku. I was a bit worried that they would cut this part since Pakku initially seemed pretty okay with everything. The fight itself was a bit slow and some weird CG physics oddities, which this show suffers a bit from. They cut the sick move where Katara punches one of Pakku's freezing moves. I feel like if you do this fight, you kinda have to include that combo, but whatever, another cute Momo moment. Episode 8. I actually love that they doubled down on the fact that the women aren't allowed to help with fighting. This helps make the scene where they actually do fight more impactful. And oh my god, my heart stopped when they did that Momo scene. If they had killed off Momo, I don't know, I would have done unspeakable things. And this probably would have ruined the entire show for me. But thankfully, Yui revives Momo with some spirit water, so I guess we're gonna see waterbending Momo in the next season. I don't know, we will see. The spirit races itself might be a bit much. From a single island to a full forest that is like almost as big, if not bigger than the actual city, is too far from the source material in my opinion. But I guess I needed that space to land the airship and do all of that other stuff, which I'm actually a fan of. It never made much sense to me that Zhao is just there all of a sudden. The fight between Zuko and Katara was awesome, already looked good in the preview too. The moon effects were awesome too. I like the color changes that they did, especially when they were bending and the color for a split second showed up again. The visual and sound design of Koizilla is awesome. The Koizilla CGI was very well done in my opinion. Well, I guess it had to be since a huge part of the budget for the show was used for that. My only complaint would be that the water was too dark, but I love the sounds, which were modified whale sounds, and overall this whole like fighting scene with Koizilla was pretty well done. I think we couldn't have had it any better really. So nice that they put their hearts into this. I'm also glad that they skipped Zuko carrying Aang into the blizzard. It made no sense in the original of him carrying Aang that far. We actually just noticed that while making the Northern Water Tribe, that he would have walked up that whole glacier, which is like hundreds of meters tall, with Aang on his shoulders. So yeah, I don't think it would have worked in the live action, and the way they did it in the show was better in my opinion. Okay, so what's my verdict? Overall, I think it's a very watchable show. Some decisions had me scratching my head. I don't know why they would include any specific book 2 or 3 moments. I'm kind of mad they cut the Northern Air Temple. Introducing Azula early works out great in my opinion. But, and here comes the big one, I need more Momo. Episode 4 really had me worried about how they were gonna pivot, but they caught themselves a little bit, thankfully. The CGI for the most part was very good. I love the bending effects, although earthbending was definitely the weakest effect visually, and I think the waterbending lacked some impact. Most of the time it's just a few splashes. Visually very well done though. The environments look absolutely stunning. However, the show does have a big problem with full CG characters and their physics though. Some parts were really obviously CG for me. That was really distracting. As I said before, using those models for close-ups is baffling. There are also some other moments in which it looked odd, like in the Blue Spirit scene when Zuko is fighting. But my biggest gripe is the lack of interaction in between the gang. The show, despite cutting many episodes, felt extremely rushed while having the same runtime as the original. Our heroes rushed from one objective to the next without reflecting or even properly talking to each other. They just focus on the main quest, if you will. In that sense, Avatar always felt to me like an open world game in which the side quests tell you the full story of this world and build the feeling around it. This part is completely absent from the live action and was a big bummer for me that they cut so much of the actual fun aspects and the world building aspects. This is what makes Avatar actually feel different and great. Aang learns not one bit of waterbending and doesn't even meet Jong for some early firebending training, and therefore also does not fear the learning of firebending by hurting Katara, unless they move that to book 2 and fit even more things in that. There's also little to no actual character growth on screen, and everything is told to the viewer, little is shown. But despite everything, I feel like they did an overall good job to compress the story of book 1 down. I do hope that they take a bit more time with book 2, maybe even splitting the season up in 2. There are so many things happening in book 2 that feel like it would be a waste to cut if they cut it. Likewise, Toph will be a major point they need to get right. Don't give her a wig like Yui. Get her character and wit right. Because Toph is carrying book 2 so hard, so they need to find a good actress and the performance must hit. Also, by no means I would recommend this show to a first-time Avatar viewer, but if you know the source material, it is an interesting take, when also sometimes with some questionable changes. The show also has a ton of exposition. The acting is pretty flat, although there's some standout performances like Zuko, Gyatso, or even the Earthbender that was blaming Iroh for Ba Sing Se. It almost feels like they took every first take for a scene and called it a day. I truly believe, however, that season 2 will be way better, given the source material and the fact that the actors got some practice in, probably feel a bit more comfortable with each other, as well as fans giving their feedback, and the fact they got to use the volume a little bit more, but time will tell. Overall, I feel very split on it. On the one hand, it does have its awesome moments. It was miles better than the movie, but we don't talk about that. And I think it was a reasonably good first season. But some changes are crazy, considering what still needs to happen in later books. So I'm interested how they will snake around the stuff they have written themselves into. But let me know what you think. Very interested to hear your opinion on it. Seems like the internet is also very split on it. So yeah, let me know in the comments how you liked it. Anyways, I hope you have a great day. Enjoyed the video. Stay safe.
That wasn't a good play.
I'll say.
No kidding. Horrible. You said it.
But the effects were decent.